So ever since Joe Biden has taken office, nay, even before then, people are wondering, when's he going to be impeached? Well, now we know. May 18th, 2023, because that is when Marjorie Taylor filed articles of impeachment against Joe Biden. I think this is very exciting. It's going to be very interesting. I wonder if she'll have the votes to actually impeach him. But I think, it's a positive step. It certainly makes sense. There are so many different things that you could go after him. You could go after him when it comes to competence, right? Because, sometimes you wonder how much of his brain does he have left that hasn't been liquefied. Then also just like some of the decisions that he's made just seem like terrible. Brain damage or not, right? Like pulling out of Afghanistan was an awful decision. That alone could be an article of impeachment. Or it could be criminality and corruption, because you have the whole Hunter Biden situation, using him for business deals in Ukraine and all this stuff. Also, allegedly trying to cover up for Hunter Biden's various misdeeds and crimes. There's so many ways that you could target Joe Biden for impeachment, if not criminal charges. So let's see which tactics Marjorie Taylor Greene decided to use to file articles of impeachment against Joe Biden.
Power corrupts. The Biden administration is proof of it. From the top down, virtually every person involved in this disturbing America Last executive branch has weaponized their office to target their political opponents. It's unprecedented, and it's not the American way. This week, I've solemnly and soberly chosen to use the powers that the founders provided and issue a check against what the Biden administration thinks are unfettered powers. It's something I don't take lightly. On Tuesday, I submitted articles of impeachment against the U.S. Attorney for the District of Columbia, Matthew Graves.
Oh.
Mr. Graves is derelict in his duty.
Hey, yo, wait, she also filed articles of impeachment against Matthew Graves, U.S. Attorney, FBI Director Chris Wray, very fair, Attorney General Garland, interesting, and Secretary Mayorkas, also definitely Mayorkas. If anyone here should be impeached, I guess Wray as well, and certainly Biden, but also Mayorkas. Many of you guys have not been paying attention to Mayorkas, but he has lied very consistently during multiple hearings and testimonies on the House floor. Like, either he is being intentionally deceptive or he is just dumb and doesn't know basic facts about his job and what he needs to do. So I'm not sure which of it is the case, but in either way, I definitely think that Mayorkas has got to go.
Duty as the chief prosecutor for Washington, D.C. He is in a unique position of the top law enforcement officer for both federal and local crimes, but he's refusing to do his job. Under his watch, 67% of arrests have gone unprosecuted. Many
Why?
of these are violent crimes where the victims are left with.
Oh, I know why. It's because the people doing the crime are black and they don't want to put more black people in jail. It stinks, but that's basically what's behind the whole let's not prosecute anyone for doing crime. Because they're trying to hit a quota so that there's equity in jail, right? As many white people are in jail as black people. That's their goal. And if that means that your grandma's got to get bashed in the head with a skillet in a baseball bat, then so be it.
Wondering, where has justice gone? It's no wonder that he is ignoring these acts that destroy the lives of residents of our nation's capital, because he is solely focused on a 3-hour event that happened on January 6, 2021. He is devoting his entire office to maliciously prosecuting as many people as he possibly can, including nonviolent, peaceful protesters. Graves is refusing to do his job. He must be impeached.
I don't like, and I will say most of the people like in January 6th, even the people who went into the building were peaceful. However, I don't like the characterization of that as a peaceful protest, because, just like the Black Lives Matter riots and the Antifa riots, January 6th was not, its primary aim was not necessarily to be peaceful. There were just a lot of peaceful people who got wrapped up in the chaos. There were movements, to go in and very forcefully storm the Capitol, go into the place and allegedly hold, members of Congress hostage, so that they would vote the way that they wanted them to in the electoral college system. Didn't really work out that well because the, servicemen and women did their job of keeping them safe. But at the end of the day, I don't think that it was peaceful is what you should lead with when talking about January 6th.
On Tuesday, I also submitted articles of impeachment against FBI Director Christopher Wray. Director Wray has turned the Federal Bureau of Investigation into the personal police force of Joe Biden and Attorney General Merrick Garland. It is wholly unacceptable for the FBI director or any civil officer to use their power in a way that targets one political class and favors another. Wray has used Soviet-style tactics in his targeting of average Americans and placed threat tags on everyone from pro-life groups to traditional Catholics. He even said,
I think a lot of this is just coming from why it is I don't like Marjorie Taylor Greene, because she's kind of a pro-Trump shill, right? She'll just do whatever Trump wants her to do, more or less. I think that she's, a little bit too extreme. But here, we kind of see, I think, her political animus kind of tainting these articles. Because I think these articles, if she's reading from the articles themselves, there's some good stuff in the articles. There's some meat there, but it's just surrounded by all of this bloat and fat because, she's calling Chris Wray Soviet style. That's not really something of substance. That's a characterization of his actions. Now, are his actions Soviet style? Arguably. I think the case for that could certainly be made, but I would rather she focus solely on what it is that he did and then leave the characterizations up, maybe for someone else to take care of.
Sent armed agents to the home of President Donald Trump, who is also the current frontrunner in the Republican presidential election, in a politically motivated raid to influence
Man, I can't believe I forgot about that raid. That raid was ridiculous. I did not know that Chris Wray, made the call over that. That's insane.
Coming election, all while shielding the current Democrat president's vile son from a criminal probe. Wray is using his extremely powerful law enforcement role for political purposes. He must be impeached. Yesterday morning, I introduced articles of impeachment against Attorney General Merrick Garland. Since Merrick Garland took over as Attorney General, he has completely weaponized the Department of Justice to the point, under his control, it has become the Department of Injustice. The politicization of the DOJ has resulted in the persecution of the left's political enemies and a two-tier justice system. Garland is using the FBI as the personal police force for his boss, Joe Biden. He has launched investigations into everyone from parents who protest their local school boards to former and future President Donald J. Trump. Nothing short of election interference. His corruption knows no bounds. While Antifa and BLM terrorists have caused billions of dollars in property damage and taken lives, Garland instead persecutes Americans who engaged in legitimate political protests, people who were overwhelmingly nonviolent.
I don't know if it was legitimate. I don't think that January 6th was legitimate, but she has a good point. You can't go so hard against the January 6th protesters who did less damage. They were less violent, even though many of them were extremely violent. Their protests didn't last nearly as long, and also was far less effective than the Black Lives Matter and Antifa riots during the Summer of Love, where they just went and burned cities to the ground because somebody got killed. Right? It actually seems very silly in hindsight. But yeah, it would be one thing if, Garland was going after the Black Lives Matter protesters and the Antifa protesters. And I'd be like, yeah, throw some of the January 6 folks in jail. I still think that some of the January 6 folks should be thrown in jail. I'm glad that Enrique Tarrio, for example, has been charged with the crimes, finally. But, if you're not going to go after folks who literally burn cities to the ground, but you're going to, arrest and charge folks for trespassing on government grounds for, an hour or two. I think that can certainly explain why some people feel like you might be corrupt, if you know what I'm saying.
Many of them just walking through the Capitol. Garland's total politicization and perversion of the American justice system has only one remedy: impeachment. Yesterday, I also introduced articles of impeachment against Department of Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas. Since assuming office, Secretary Mayorkas has aided and abetted the complete invasion of our country by deliberately flooding our nation with drugs, terrorists, and illegal aliens. Mayorkas has allowed approximately 6 million illegal border encounters and 1.4 million known gotaways. But how many more don't we even know about? He has intentionally diverted resources away from our borders, stopped construction of the border wall, and broke existing laws by allowing mass parole for illegal aliens. Mayorkas ended President Trump's Remain in Mexico policy, and we are back to the days of catching and releasing illegal aliens directly into the United States.
And this situation is crazy. Now, Mayorkas, I think, Mayorkas is a whole other level. So he has been instrumental in a lot of the disastrous immigration policies that we've had as of late. We would just let everyone in with no regard as to of whether or not our infrastructure, our cities, and our communities can't handle it.
Mayorkas stated under oath that we have operational control of our borders. He lied to the American people, he lied under oath, and he has blatantly violated his oath of office. Secretary Mayorkas must be impeached. It is with the highest amount of solemnity that I announce my intention to introduce articles of impeachment today on the head of this America at Last executive branch that has been working since January 20th, 2021 to systematically destroy this country. The President of the United States, Joseph Robinette Biden. Joe Biden has deliberately compromised our national security by refusing to enforce immigration laws and secure our border, allowed approximately 6 million illegals from over 170 countries to invade our country, deprived Border Patrol of the necessary resources and policies sufficient to protect our country. And his administration has willfully refused to maintain operational control as required by the law. He has allowed fentanyl, the #1 killer of Americans between the age of 18 and 45, to overwhelmingly flood into our country and kill around 300 Americans every single day. These aren't just Americans, these are people's family members. These are their sons, their daughters, their brothers, their sisters, their mothers, their fathers, their cousins, aunts, and uncles. These are American families. His administration has lost complete contact with approximately 85,000 unaccompanied illegal alien children. And his policies have forced...
you can just be losing children, bro. That's bad. What if they're in danger? What if they're being trafficked? What if they've been killed and we don't even know? That's unbelievable. This is terrible. And another thing too is, some of these things that Marjorie Taylor Greene is saying, they could be like, if Joe Biden was in a coma for 9 months, that's why things are kind of starting to fall apart because, he's not, doing this, he's not doing that, he's not implementing new strategies to stop the imports of fentanyl into the country. But it's not just that. He's been putting in policies that have been directly causing some of these issues, such as the immigration situation. He's been systematically removing some of the barriers for folks to come into the country illegally. And on top of that, he has been removing resources from law enforcement in order to keep the community safe or keep out illegal immigrants. Like, and that's just on immigration alone. Like, it would be one thing if Joe Biden was asleep at the wheel, but no, he is in reverse, at a red light turning into a green light and then hitting the gas pedal. Like, he is going backwards when we need to be going forwards.
Tens of thousands of illegal children into slave labor. Where are these kids? No one even knows. It's horrible. Joe Biden has reinstated catastrophic and disastrous catch and release policies, which have allowed illegals to flood our country and our communities. He ended Remain in Mexico and reinstated catch and release. Under Biden's command, the Secretary of Homeland Security has illegally granted mass parole to aliens when U.S. federal law only permits parole to be granted on a specific case-by-case basis. He endangered the lives of Americans by allowing illegal aliens who had tested positive for COVID-19 to enter our country and infect American citizens, yet while enforcing strict COVID policies on...
Right, that's the thing, because like there's one thing if it's like, oh, it's just COVID, right? I mean, at this point, it's like the worst flu that we have in America right now. Basically, is what COVID-19 is. Even now, actually, I don't even know if it's still more deadly than the flu with all the different variants that we've got going on. But it'd be one thing to just like let him in. But he wasn't just doing that. He was also enforcing, these strict COVID guidelines, and policies. So it's like, it's hypocrisy, right? When you're like, oh, COVID-19 is such a serious thing, and then you're letting COVID-19 positive immigrants into the country, right? Like, I don't think that COVID's a big idea, but if you're going to act like it's a big idea when it comes to Americans, you would think that it would be a big deal when it comes to immigrants coming into the country as well.
American citizens. His policies, directives, and statements surrounding the southern border have violated our laws and destroyed our country. Biden has blatantly violated his constitutional duty, and he is a direct threat to our national security. Therefore, Joseph Robinette Biden is unfit to serve as the President of the United States and must be impeached.
I mean, we already knew that since day one.
Out in the real world, where American taxpayers live, employees are fired when they are corrupt or aren't adequately serving their employer or purposely destroying a company. In this case, the employer is the American people because they pay the salaries. They pay the salaries of everyone in the federal government. The Constitution outlines a very simple process to fire the corrupt officials serving in the federal government: impeachment. Matthew Graves, Christopher Wray, Merrick Garland, Alejandro Mayorkas, and Joe Biden are all corrupt and unfit to hold office, and they all must be impeached. This concludes impeachment week. And now I can take...
Wow. I mean, if you guys have watched my content, I'm no big fan of Marjorie Taylor Greene, especially after the whole situation with picking Kevin McCarthy as Speaker of the House. I just don't really like Marjorie Taylor Greene at all. But I kind of do agree with this decision here, even if she is heavily biased and she used far more inflammatory language than I would have liked. At the root of it, there are some really good arguments here to file articles of impeachment against all of these characters. So I'm looking forward to seeing, how many of these heads get lopped off. Not literally, but professionally. But I'm interested to see, what happens. How many of these people actually get impeached and where this ends up going? Because, Joe Biden, I could definitely see him getting impeached at least once during his tenure. So, I don't know. I'm actually rooting for Marjorie Taylor Greene for once. Wow. What a shocker. I did not have that on my bingo card.